All right. Uh, Talking about the chapter in Chosen Butsu of the 19th century. Um, Talks specifically about worship patterns that were being changed in the 19th century. It states that worship patterns mostly showed very little change, at least in their home regions. But in Europe uh, and Western moving churches in America, there came a mighty mission emphasis. So all these churches decided it's time that we go out and do missions for everybody. Um, Africa and Asia saw a large part of the spread as well, but this spread seemed to go hand in hand with colonialism, especially with the large, powerful European governments. So as the colonies were being put out, the spread of Christianity was going with them, probably because the Europeans were forcing it. Some of the bigger missionary names were William Carey. He went to India. David Livingstone, he went to Africa. Adoniram Judson, he went to Burma. And Robert Morrison, and he went to China. These names still carry a whole lot of weight to mission-minded Christians today. So if you start dropping these, be prepared for some of them to go, oh. Independence from Great Britain actually encouraged American churches to develop their own worship patterns. Lots of churches kept the liturgical practices of Europe, mostly the Lutherans and the Reformed churches, but they added an emphasis on preaching and on the importance of communion. The Roman Catholic tradition changed almost none, if at all. It still had all the sacraments, practiced the Sunday Mass very much the same way as it had been for centuries. The priests still had training and did all the stuff that they had been doing for years. Lutherans began to change some of the details in their worship forms. They did not take communion every week, but instead only took it periodically and focused Sunday on the sermon. There was a lot of tension between old school Lutherans and the much more laid back American Lutherans when they started to come together. Reformed churches presented a much more varied picture of worship. Their traditional biblical psalms translated into French, and then they were put to good music to be used on Sunday services. That was only in some congregations, while in other congregations, music was completely done away with, and it was purely biblical psalms sang a cappella. Anglicans worldwide at this time turned back to more formal worship and weekly celebration of the Lord's Supper. The pattern was established to have the Eucharist each week with an emphasis on a Eucharistic service on the first Sunday of every month. So they just focused more on having communion in the Lord's Supper. Then the Baptists changed to the point where they only baptized those that related and actually demonstrated evidence of conversion, which created kind of a big stir because people didn't want them to discriminate, and they wanted everyone to be baptized. There's several other denominations mentioned, such as the Quakers, the Methodists, African American groups, and the groups associated with the American frontier. Their range of services goes from the unformatted Quaker meetings to the extremely rigorous liturgical forms of Roman Catholics. During this time, we also see kind of what was thought of at the time as strange American patterns emerging out of the frontier living. Americans seemed to be longing for something different, probably an experience of God that touched mind, body, and emotions, which the book says is a longing that cannot be fulfilled by any single tradition. That is chapter 9 in a nutshell.